The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council was vast, its walls shimmering with holographic projections of star systems and alien symbols. At its center, Earth's delegation sat before the Council's leaders, powerful beings who had governed the galaxy for millennia. Among them were the Enkar, a race of hyper-intelligent, biotechnologically enhanced beings who saw themselves as the galaxy's oldest and most advanced civilization. Beside them were the Xalaxians, a species of towering, energy-absorbing giants, and the Karens, an insectoid race with a hive mind capable of coordinating entire fleets in perfect harmony. Earth's ambassador, Cassandra Hayes, stood tall at the front of the room, her heart racing. Her delegation had traveled across the stars to this pivotal moment, the first formal meeting between humanity and the Galactic Council. The weight of history pressed on her, but the aliens across from her seemed unbothered, almost amused. They had heard of humanity's wild, untamed history and looked down on Earth as a backwater planet full of brash, unpredictable species. Cassandra knew they underestimated her kind, but she couldn't let the simmering rage inside her cloud her focus. Instead, she turned her gaze to the Enkar representative, a being who appeared to be a massive floating brain with shimmering tendrils. "We are here to join the galactic community," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her hands. "We bring our knowledge, our resources, and our potential to the table. Earth has much to offer." The Enkar's tendrils waved dismissively. "Your planet is primitive, young human. You have no understanding of the greater cosmos. Your technology is laughable. Your civilization barely advanced beyond the use of fire. You may sit with us, though you are nothing more than an observer for now." A ripple of amusement spread through the council, but Cassandra's resolve only deepened. Earth had been through war, famine, and near extinction, but in the face of adversity, humanity had always risen. The resilience of humanity was something they couldn't see, or so she hoped. She wasn't just there to beg for a seat at the table. She was there to make them see. She took a deep breath and looked across the room. "You may think us weak now, but history has shown that humans thrive where others falter. We adapt. We learn. And when we rise, we do so with a strength no one expects." She paused, locking eyes with the Karen representative, who buzzed with amusement. "You underestimate us at your peril." The room went silent. For a moment, no one spoke. Cassandra could feel their collective gaze on her, the cold, dismissive stares of the galaxy's elites. Then, the Karen leader clicked his mandibles together, a sound that echoed through the chamber. "We shall see, human. You may have potential, but for now, you are nothing more than a curiosity. You are free to observe our affairs, but that is all." The council members nodded, their decision final. Cassandra's heart sank. Earth's request had been granted, but it was clear humanity was still seen as little more than an insignificant speck in the grand scheme of the universe. She bowed, keeping her emotions in check as she left the chamber, knowing the road ahead would be far harder than anyone realized. Back on Earth, the rejection weighed heavily on Cassandra and her team. The council's words echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of the galaxy's scorn. But rather than surrender to despair, Cassandra saw an opportunity, a crack in the armor of the galaxy's perceived invincibility. Earth's brightest minds, scientists, engineers, and military strategists, gathered in secret, determined to turn the tables on their dismissive peers. They would prove the council wrong, not with brute force, but with ingenuity. Cassandra convened a clandestine meeting in a secure underground facility in the Nevada desert. Around the table were some of Earth's leading scientists, most of whom had spent their careers studying alien technology. These were people who understood the stakes and had no illusions about the challenges ahead. Dr. Marcus Klein, a brilliant but eccentric scientist, leaned forward with a sharp glint in his eyes. "They think we're primitive. They think we don't understand the scope of their technology, their power. But they're wrong. We've been studying their ships, their weapons, their bioengineering techniques. It's not magic. It's just science they've had longer than we have. Cassandra nodded. Then it's time to catch up. We don't need to outmatch them in raw strength. We need to outthink them. The team's first task was to gather intel, scout alien supply lines, uncover weak spots in their technology, and understand their behavior. The humans' advantage was their adaptability. They could learn quickly, often in ways the aliens didn't anticipate. It wasn't long before they uncovered a significant vulnerability in the NCAR's bioenhanced ships. The aliens, despite their intellect, had failed to account for one simple flaw: their over-reliance on their technology, which left them vulnerable to human creativity. Using stealth technology based on reverse-engineered alien components, the humans set their plan in motion. The team infiltrated a supply depot in the Outer Rim, a key hub for the NCAR fleet. The mission was simple, yet dangerous: steal the weapons and supplies that could shift the balance of power in humanity's favor. In the dead of night, under the cover of a nearby asteroid field, a small human strike team, a mix of military veterans, hackers, and engineers, boarded their craft. The tension was palpable. Each member understood the stakes. Failure meant death, or worse, imprisonment under alien custody. The mission was executed with precision. The humans disabled the outer security systems with ease, slipping past the NCAR guards undetected. They accessed the storage bays where the alien weapons and fuel were kept, futuristic tech that could level entire planets. As the team loaded their ship with stolen goods, the ship's leader, Captain Lynn Reeve, set her eyes on the most valuable prize: a prototype NCAR weapon, capable of manipulating gravitational fields. If humanity could understand it, it could revolutionize their war strategies. As they prepared to leave, disaster struck. The NCAR were alerted. The team scrambled to escape, facing a brutal firefight as they launched their stolen goods into hyperspace. The human ship narrowly avoided capture, but not without taking heavy damage. They barely made it back to their hidden base, alive, but with a treasure trove of technology. As the ship landed, Cassandra greeted them with a mixture of relief and triumph. They had done it. The stolen technology was a game-changer, but the implications were far greater than simply defeating the NCAR. Humanity had just proven something more important. They could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's mightiest races. Dr. Klein was already examining the prototype weapon, his hands shaking with excitement. "We can reverse engineer this. With this, we can level the playing field, and then some." Cassandra's eyes hardened with determination. "This is only the beginning. We're no longer just observers. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can do." With the stolen NCAR technology in their hands, humanity's resolve hardened. The small, covered human resistance quickly went to work, refining the alien weapons and using them to bolster their fledgling forces. The next step was clear. They would not merely play defense anymore. They would strike. But where? It came sooner than expected. A massive galactic conflict erupted between the Zrathian Empire, a militaristic species bent on conquest, and the Vortec Coalition, a peaceful alliance of star systems. Both factions had vast fleets, powerful armies, and control over strategic resources. The Zrathians had long sought dominance over the galaxy, and their expansionist campaign threatened to engulf the entire sector. The Vortec Coalition, already struggling to defend its borders, sought help wherever it could find it. Humanity, with its growing fleet of advanced ships and weapons, saw this as their moment. But instead of sitting back as mere observers, the human resistance, led by Cassandra Hayes, formed a fragile but crucial alliance with the Vortec. The strategy was simple: use human ingenuity to disrupt the Zrathians' overwhelming advantage and turn the tide in favor of the coalition. The human-led forces deployed a series of calculated surprise attacks. Their first major strike targeted a heavily fortified Zrathian communications relay, located on a barren moon near the Vortec border. With the Zrathians relying on highly structured military tactics Any disruption to their communication networks would throw their entire battle plan into disarray. The plan was delicate. One slip-up, and the humans would be crushed. Yet, it was a risk worth taking. As the stealthy human ships approached the Zrathian base, the tension was unbearable. Each member of the team, led by Captain Lena Reeve, knew they had only one shot at this. They would infiltrate the moon's surface, sabotage the relay, and leave before the Zrathians even knew what hit them. The assault was precise. Humans used their stolen NCAR technology to disable Zrathian sentry drones before they could alert the base. They planted explosives on the communication towers and set them to detonate with surgical timing. But just as they were about to make their escape, the unexpected happened. A Zrathian patrol arrived early, catching the humans in the act. Gunfire echoed across the barren landscape as the Zrathians' soldiers swarmed the base. For a moment, it seemed like all was lost. But then, something extraordinary happened. Captain Reeve, thinking on her feet, ordered a retreat, but with a twist. Instead of fleeing directly back to their ships, the humans used the terrain to their advantage, creating a diversion by triggering a series of seismic charges that caused part of the moon's surface to collapse into a massive crater. In the chaos, the Zrathian forces were caught off guard. The human team, with their superior knowledge of guerrilla tactics, used the distraction to escape. As their ships launched into the atmosphere, the relay exploded in a blinding flash, sending a shockwave through the Zrathian fleet's communication grid. Back in Vortex space, the results were immediate. The Zrathians, thrown into disarray, lost critical coordination among their forces. The Vortex coalition, with human-led guidance, mounted a rapid counteroffensive. Ships scrambled to exploit the Zrathians' confusion, and within hours, the tide of the battle began to turn. It wasn't a decisive victory yet, but it was the first time in the war that the galaxy's superpowers saw humanity's potential. The humans' small but agile forces had struck a significant blow, proving that they could fight and win against even the most advanced and entrenched powers. But the victory came with a cost. The human forces suffered casualties, and several ships were heavily damaged in the final assault. Despite the triumph, Cassandra's mind raced with the knowledge that the Zrathian Empire would retaliate, and with greater force. The odds were still stacked against them, but now humanity had proven something vital. They weren't just survivors. They were warriors. As the human fleet regrouped and repaired its ships, Cassandra addressed her officers. "This is just the beginning. They'll come after us, and they'll come hard. But now, they know what we can do. We'll keep pushing until they understand that humanity is not to be underestimated." The galaxy had taken its first glimpse of the spark of human defiance, and that spark was about to ignite a fire that would change the course of galactic history forever. Victory against the Zrathian Empire had brought humanity a hard-earned sense of confidence. The Vortex Coalition, emboldened by their unexpected ally, had begun to shift the balance of power in the region. However, their success also attracted the attention of other galactic powers, most notably the Galvor Dominion, a mysterious and highly influential faction within the Galactic Council, and the true puppet masters behind much of the galaxy's political machinations. Unbeknownst to the human resistance, the Galvor Dominion had been monitoring their progress closely. They had already been aware of the humans' ability to adapt and evolve, but their true concern lay in the threat humanity posed to the existing order. The last thing they wanted was an unpredictable force like humanity disrupting the carefully balanced alliances that had kept the galaxy in a fragile stasis for centuries. The first signs of trouble came in the form of a covert message intercepted by human intelligence. It was a whisper, an anomaly in the otherwise predictable flow of communications between the alien factions. Cassandra and her most trusted allies in the resistance listened intently as the decoded message revealed a plot that had been months in the making. A high-ranking diplomat from the Galactic Council, one who had outwardly supported humanity's rise, had been secretly working to undermine them. The diplomat, A sleek, silver-skinned Salaxian named Malzar had been manipulating key leaders within the Vortec Coalition, feeding them false information about humanity's motivations. What appeared to be genuine support for Earth's cause was actually a calculated attempt to weaken their position by sowing discord among their allies. Malzar is playing both sides, Cassandra muttered, as she read through the intercepted transmission. He's been feeding the Vortec lies about our intentions, convincing them we're just as self-interested as any other galactic power. He's trying to isolate us, make us expendable. It wasn't just the Vortec who were at risk. The Galvor Dominion had strategically placed agents within the highest echelons of the Galactic Council to subtly tilt the vote in their favor, encouraging the Council to see humanity's alliance with the Vortec as a threat. Their goal was clear: divide and conquer. And if the humans didn't act fast, the galactic powers could easily turn the tide against them. Cassandra's team had no time to waste. They had to expose Malzar's treachery before it was too late. As the team began to unravel the web of lies, it became clear that the task was far more difficult than they had anticipated. Malzar had expertly covered his tracks. He had built a network of loyal supporters within the Vortec, each of whom was unknowingly complicit in the conspiracy. To reveal the truth would risk tearing the alliance apart. Yet, if they didn't act, the Galvor Dominion would have humanity on the ropes. The situation came to a head when an emergency council meeting was called by the Galvor Dominion. It was clear that the Dominion had managed to sway the Galactic Council into considering a resolution to break the alliance between humanity and the Vortec. The Council was poised to label humanity's newfound strength as a destabilizing force, to label them a rogue faction, and to strip Earth of its newfound seat among the galactic powers. Cassandra knew that this meeting could spell disaster. The only way to prevent the dissolution of the alliance was to expose Malzar's deception, and fast. In a desperate move, the human resistance orchestrated a counterintelligence operation. They infiltrated the Council's communications network, feeding critical information to a trusted group of Vortec leaders who had yet to fall under Malzar's sway. It was risky. One wrong move and their entire operation would be exposed, but it was humanity's only hope. On the eve of the council meeting, Cassandra's team managed to leak a series of encrypted messages detailing Malzar's covert dealings with the Galvor Dominion. It was a gamble that could either destroy Malzar's influence or tear the fragile human Vortec alliance to pieces. The moment of truth came as Malzar stood at the center of the council chamber, preparing to make his final pitch to the council, when the encrypted messages went live. The council chamber buzzed with confusion as the evidence of his treachery was broadcasted across the entire galactic network. Malzar's composure cracked. The Xalaxian diplomat stammered, his carefully constructed facade shattering as accusations were hurled from every corner of the room. In the chaos, the Vortec leaders, now armed with the truth, turned against Malzar, publicly denouncing his actions. The Galvor Dominion's subtle manipulations were exposed to the galaxy, and the human Vortec alliance was stronger than ever. Yet, even in victory, Cassandra couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that this was only the beginning. The Galvor Dominion would not be so easily deterred. The web of deception had only begun to unravel, and the stakes had just become higher than ever. The victory against Malzar had, for a moment, given humanity and the Vortec a semblance of unity. The Galvor Dominion's manipulations had been exposed, and the fragile alliance between the two factions seemed solidified. But Cassandra knew better. The galaxy was too vast, too ruthless, and far too complex to trust that any victory would be permanent. The celebration following Malzar's downfall was short-lived. The political landscape had shifted. Humanity had earned its place at the table, but the Council's whispers of destabilizing forces still lingered. The Galvor Dominion, humiliated but not broken, began shifting tactics. Their goal was no longer to simply control the narrative from the shadows. It was now to break humanity and its allies apart, piece by piece. The first sign of this new strategy came in the form of a covert operation against the Vortec Coalition itself. Just days after Malzar's public disgrace, a devastating series of attacks struck multiple Vortec colonies along their border. Entire cities were reduced to rubble, and millions of innocent lives were lost. The Vortec leadership immediately suspected a rogue faction of Zrathians had escalated their war with the Coalition, but the truth was far more sinister. The attacks had all the hallmarks of the Galvor Dominion: precise, calculated, and devastating. The Vortec were enraged, and their leadership, already fragile from the betrayal of Malzar, was now fractured. Factions within the Vortec Council began arguing over whether to retaliate against the Zrathians or the Galvor, and whether humanity should be considered an ally or a liability. In their grief and confusion, some of the more isolationist factions began to call for severing ties with Earth, claiming that humanity's involvement had only brought chaos into their lives. As Cassandra and the human resistance monitored the situation, it became clear that the Dominion was playing the Vortec like a game of chess, exploiting their wounds, feeding their paranoia, and splintering their resolve. Humanity had no choice but to intervene. If the Vortec split, the fragile coalition they had built would collapse, and with it, any chance of repelling the coming storm. Cassandra called an emergency summit. The human delegation, now joined by the most influential Vortec leaders who still held true to the Alliance, gathered in a secure location deep within Vortec-controlled space. There they debated fiercely, with old mistrust simmering beneath the surface. "We can't keep letting them divide us," Cassandra argued, her voice steely. "The Galvor Dominion's plan is to weaken both of us. We're stronger together. We have to stand united or we'll fall." But Vortec Chancellor Zyron, a stern leader who had once been an ally, was unconvinced. "Your people's ambition has only drawn unwanted attention, human," he said, his mandibles clicking with irritation. "We were stronger before you arrived. Now you've only made us targets for the Dominion's wrath." The words cut deep. Cassandra felt the weight of Zyron's accusation, even as she knew it wasn't entirely true. Humanity had brought change to the galaxy, but change was often seen as a threat to the established order. Zyron's words were a reflection of the fear that was now gripping the Vortec leadership. Fear of the unknown, fear of humanity's unpredictable ways, fear that they had unknowingly opened the door to an uncontrollable future. But just as the summit threatened to fracture completely, an unexpected voice spoke up. Vortec General Elisara, a highly respected military leader who had fought alongside humanity during their initial battles against the Zrathians, stood in defense of the Alliance. "I've seen what humanity can do, Chancellor," she said, her voice unwavering. "In the last battle, we fought as equals. The Zrathians didn't expect us to work together, and they paid the price for it. The Galvor Dominion's attacks are a sign. They want us divided. They want us weak." Elisara's words hung in the air. Her reputation as a military strategist was unmatched, and her support for the humans turned the tide of the debate. Slowly, the room fell silent as more voices rose in favor of holding the Alliance together. Humanity wasn't a burden. They were a key player in the battle to come. However, the damage had been done. The Vortec leadership was deeply divided, and though the Alliance held for the moment, Cassandra knew it was only a matter of time before the Galvor made their next move. She couldn't allow her people to be caught off guard again. That night, as Cassandra returned to her quarters, she reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The Dominion had grown bolder, their influence spreading even further. They were preparing for something massive, something that would change the course of the war. Humanity would need every scrap of its ingenuity, every ounce of its defiance, if they were to stand a chance against what was coming. The real battle was just beginning. The fragile alliance between humanity and the Vortec held, but the tensions were palpable. Cassandra knew that the Galvor Dominion's manipulations weren't over. They were only just beginning. The Dominion had proven time and time again that they were willing to go to extreme lengths to maintain control over the galaxy, and with the Vortec now torn between those who still believed in the Alliance and those who didn't, Cassandra felt the weight of their survival on her shoulders. But humanity was no stranger to adversity. Every time they were backed into a corner, they found a way to push forward. They had fought and bled for a place at the table, and they would not let it slip away now. The first sign of the Dominion's true plans came in the form of a massive fleet, the largest the galaxy had ever seen. The Dominion, having regained its composure after the scandal surrounding Malzar, had prepared for a decisive strike. This time, however, their target wasn't just the Vortec, or even the humans. It was the heart of the galaxy itself, the Galactic Council. For years, the Galactic Council had stood as the symbol of peace and cooperation in the galaxy. It was the decision-making body for all interstellar affairs, the final arbiter of conflicts. If the Galvor Dominion could take control of the Council, they would have dominion over every race, every system, and every conflict in the galaxy. The Council's headquarters, a massive station known as the Nexus, was located in the neutral zone between all major factions, a symbol of unity. Cassandra had heard whispers of the attack for weeks, but now she saw the truth. The Dominion wasn't going to wait for the galaxy to fall into their hands through political maneuvering. They would take it by force. A fleet of Dominion warships, black as void and bristling with energy weapons, emerged from the galactic core, sweeping toward the Nexus. The Vortec were still recovering from their internal divisions, and while humanity's military forces had made great strides, they were still vastly outnumbered. Cassandra's mind raced. There was no time for negotiations. The time for diplomacy had passed. The only option left was to make a stand. She immediately summoned her most trusted officers for a strategy meeting. "We cannot let the Dominion take the Nexus," Cassandra said, her voice resolute. "If they succeed, the entire galaxy will fall under their control. The Vortec won't be able to hold out alone. We need to act now." Captain Lena Reeve, who had become one of Cassandra's closest allies, nodded grimly. "We don't have the firepower to take them head-on, but we can use their overconfidence against them." Cassandra's eyes sharpened. "Exactly. The Dominion believes they are invincible. They're not prepared for a counterattack. We need to hit them where it hurts, their command structure." The plan was risky, almost suicidal, but it was the only option. The human fleet, bolstered by Vortec ships that had remained loyal to the Alliance, would engage the Dominion forces in a feint. The goal wasn't to destroy them outright. That would be impossible. The goal was to draw their attention, split their forces, and give a small team of human and Vortec operatives a chance to infiltrate the Nexus station and sabotage the Dominion's command center. The battle began at dawn. The human fleet, despite its smaller numbers, launched a surprise offensive against the Dominion warships. The battle was fierce, with blinding bursts of energy lighting up the void as the ships exchanged fire. Humanity's ships, now equipped with advanced alien tech, held their own longer than anyone expected, giving the Vortec a chance to regroup and launch a counterattack. While the Dominion's attention was focused on the battle raging in orbit, a small strike team, led by Captain Reeve herself, slipped past the enemy lines and boarded the Nexus station. Their objective: reach the heart of the Dominion's command center, where the central control of the fleet was located. Navigating the Nexus was a challenge, but the team, equipped with stealth tech and armed with high-tech weaponry, moved quickly and silently. The corridors of the Nexus were silent, its vast halls eerily empty. Yet the tension in the air was suffocating. Every footstep echoed in the silence, and every turn brought them closer to their goal, and deeper into enemy territory. Just as they reached the control center, alarms blared throughout the station. The Dominion was aware of their intrusion. Time was running out. Captain Reeve and her team burst into the command center, guns raised. The Dominion officers inside froze, momentarily stunned by the human and Vortec forces that had stormed in. Without hesitation, Reeve ordered them to surrender. The officers, realizing they had no chance of survival, complied. With a swift motion, Reeve accessed the Dominion's central control system. The plan was simple: disable their fleet's coordination systems, sever their communications, and create chaos within their ranks. It was humanity's only chance to slow the Dominion's advance and turn the tide of battle. As the team planted the final explosive charges, the Nexus station's central systems flickered, and the Dominion's fleet fell into disarray. Ships lost their communication, commanders lost control, and the human fleet capitalized on the moment of chaos, launching a decisive counteroffensive. The Dominion's reckoning had begun. The battle for the Nexus wasn't just about winning a single fight. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity had the will to survive. And now, they were ready to lead. The attack on the Nexus was a bold, calculated risk, and it paid off. The Galvor Dominion, thrown into chaos by the sabotage of their command center, had lost control of their fleet. The Human Vortec Alliance, despite their smaller numbers, seized the opportunity and launched a counteroffensive that began to turn the tide of battle in their favor. But Cassandra knew this victory was fleeting. The Dominion was a vast, shadowy empire, and they would regroup quickly. They had to keep the momentum going, or risk losing everything. In the wake of the battle, the galaxy was in turmoil. The Dominion's defeat at the Nexus had exposed their vulnerabilities, and across the galaxy, whispers of rebellion began to grow louder. The once unified Galactic Council, reeling from the chaos of the Dominion's sudden fall from grace, was now fractured. Many factions, seeing humanity's boldness and the cracks in the Dominion's power, began questioning the long-standing political structure. Some saw an opportunity to break free from the Council's grip. Others saw the potential for a new order, one where humanity could lead a galaxy no longer divided by ancient alliances and power structures. Cassandra, standing on the bridge of the newly refitted human flagship Resolve, stared out into the stars. The battle at the Nexus had cost them dearly, and though the Dominion had suffered a blow, they were far from finished. The war was far from over. But something had shifted. The galaxy was watching, and humanity's actions had sparked something, an ember of rebellion that had ignited across dozens of systems. "Cassandra," Lena Reeves said, entering the command center, her voice somber. "The Council has requested a meeting. They want to discuss terms, but the Vortec are divided. Some want peace, some want retribution. The Dominion is still a threat, and we can't afford another fracture." Cassandra sighed and turned to face her. "I know, but the real question is, what happens when they come back for us? The Dominion may have lost their grip on the Nexus, but their ambition hasn't changed. The real danger lies in their retaliation. We need to move faster, to consolidate power before they can regroup." A message flickered on the holoscreen in front of them. It was from a key member of the rebellion, a former Vortec general who had been inspired by humanity's defiance. "The Vortec factions are pushing toward a unified front," he said, his image flickering with static. "But the Dominion will retaliate. We need to prepare for their next move. If we're going to keep this galaxy from falling into the hands of the old powers, it's time to act." Cassandra nodded, a new resolve forming. "Then we act. We can't wait for the Council to make decisions or for the Dominion to hit us when we're unprepared. It's time to build a new order, one where humanity leads, where the corrupt old systems are no longer in control." The plan was audacious. With the rebellion spreading, the time had come to unite the galaxy's oppressed factions. It wouldn't be easy, and not all would agree. But the truth was undeniable. The Dominion was on the verge of collapse, and the galaxy's power structures were shifting. It was now or never. Cassandra and Lena quickly set their sights on several key systems that had long been under Dominion control. These systems, home to millions of sentient species, were ripe for rebellion. Humanity would offer them an alternative, a future free from the corrupt leadership of the Galactic Council and the Dominion's imperial grasp. They would form a new coalition, not based on old alliances or grudges, but on the promise of freedom, equality, and unity in the face of oppression. They sent a message to the leaders of the systems: "Join us or stand alone." The rebellion had begun in earnest. As the Resolve and the rest of the human fleet moved toward their first target, an industrial system on the outer rim known as Clather Prime, Cassandra's mind was ablaze with thoughts of what was to come. The Dominion would not let this go. Retaliation was imminent, but they had one advantage: momentum. The galaxy had seen humanity's defiance, and that defiance was contagious. The forces on Clather Prime were scattered, vulnerable, but well-armed. The Dominion's forces had long relied on keeping the system in line through fear and overwhelming power. But as the Resolve dropped out of hyperspace over Clather, Cassandra saw something that made her pulse quicken. The rebellious fleets of the industrial system were already gathering, forming ranks under a banner of defiance. They had seen the humans rise, and now they were ready to join the fight. The rebellion was no longer just a spark. It was a fire, spreading faster than even Cassandra had imagined. "We're not alone in this anymore," Lena said, a note of triumph in her voice. "It's happening." Cassandra's gaze hardened. "We've only just begun. The Dominion won't sit idle, and neither will the old powers. We fight for a new galaxy, one that belongs to all who dare to dream of freedom." The fleet surged forward. The spark of rebellion had ignited, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The rebellion had taken on a life of its own. What had started as a desperate, underdog fight for survival had transformed into a galaxy-wide movement. The Dominion's once imposing grip was slipping, and new alliances were being forged across the stars. Humanity, once dismissed as a weak, inexperienced species, was now the symbol of defiance, leading the charge against the old powers. As Cassandra stood on the bridge of the Resolve, staring out at the expanse of stars ahead, she knew that the war was not yet over, but the end was in sight. Clather Prime, their first victory in the new rebellion, had become a rallying point for dozens of systems. Word had spread across the galaxy, and countless factions, many of whom had once been pawns in the Dominion's game, now looked to humanity for leadership. But even as hope spread, the Dominion's retaliation was swift and brutal. The Dominion, though fractured, was not to be underestimated. Their fleets regrouped, their armies reinforced, but they had underestimated the growing unity among the galaxy's diverse systems. Humanity's victory over the Nexus had emboldened many, and now the rebellion was no longer just about resisting the Dominion. It was about dismantling the power structures that had kept the galaxy in chains for centuries. Cassandra had always known that defeating the Dominion would not guarantee lasting peace. Even now, old political wounds began to resurface among the rebel factions. The power vacuum left by the Dominion's crumbling empire was already being filled by rival factions, some with noble intentions, others with more nefarious goals. The galaxy was still a tinderbox, and it was unclear which sparks would ignite the next conflict. "We need to be prepared for what comes next," Cassandra said, turning to Lena. "Victory against the Dominion is only the first step. The galaxy is wide, and the forces we face are not just military. Political forces, economic interests, they will try to steer this revolution in their own direction." Lena nodded, her eyes steady. "I know. The question is, what kind of galaxy do we want to create? The old way, or something new?" It was a question that haunted Cassandra as she surveyed the rebellion's expanding reach. They had to decide whether to simply dismantle the Dominion and return to the fractured status quo, or whether to build something entirely different. As they neared the Dominion's capital world, Karathos, a final confrontation seemed inevitable. The battle for Karathos would be the culmination of everything that had led them here: the victory at the Nexus, the liberation of countless systems, and the growth of the rebellion into something more powerful than anyone had imagined. But Cassandra knew it was not enough to simply defeat the Dominion's military forces. They had to dismantle the very system of control that had kept the galaxy in check for so long. They would have to root out the corruption that had plagued the galaxy's highest echelons and pave the way for a new order, one not ruled by fear, but by cooperation and shared ideals. The final assault on Karathos was a spectacle of chaos. The Dominion's forces had dug in deep, using the capital's defenses to mount a fierce resistance. For every inch the rebellion gained, the Dominion struck back twice as hard. But as Cassandra's fleet surged forward, her thoughts remained focused on the bigger picture. "We will take this world, Lena. But this fight is bigger than Karathos. It's about the future we want to build," Cassandra said. "We can't just win the war. We have to win the peace." The battle raged for days. The skies over Karathos were filled with the roar of ships and the flash of weapons. Both sides fought with desperation. Humanity's forces, bolstered by their new allies, pushed relentlessly forward. But even with their combined strength, the Dominion's elite forces fought with all the fury of a dying empire. On the final day of the battle, Cassandra's fleet broke through the Dominion's defenses and reached the heart of the capital city. As they landed, the once mighty Dominion elite, the leaders who had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, surrendered. But even in defeat, they remained defiant, unwilling to acknowledge the reality of their fall. Yet, for all their arrogance, the Dominion's surrender marked the beginning of a new era. The rebellion's victory on Karathos was not just a military triumph, it was the symbolic end of an old order. As Cassandra stood in the ruins of Karathos's once grand palace, she felt the weight of what they had achieved. The battle was won, but the true work had only just begun. The galaxy was free from the Dominion's grasp, but its future had yet to be decided. It was up to humanity, alongside their allies, to guide it into the light. "We did it," Lena said, her voice quiet, but filled with awe. "The galaxy's ours." Cassandra looked out over the planet, now in the process of being liberated. The scars of war would remain, but there was hope. "No," she said softly. "It's not ours. It's everyone's." The war had ended, but the dawn of a new era had just begun.